You ever look in the mirror and realize you've been fighting everybody but the real enemy? Your own choices. Life already throws enough punches, but some of us out here punching ourselves, acting like we got forever to wake up. We keep doing the same dumb things, expecting the world to hand us something different. Nah, that's not how this game works. You can't cry about the pain you picked, the wounds you invited, the circles you chose to run in. At some point, you gotta stand tall and say, enough. I'm done being the reason my life is stuck. Because every time you ignore your potential, every time you settle for less, every time you play small to fit in with people going nowhere, you're choosing stupidity over purpose. And that ain't who you were born to be. You were built for more, but you gotta stop tripping over the same lies, the same habits, the same weak excuses. You gotta rise with clarity, with fire, with the kind of self-respect that refuses to let you waste another second. This is your wake-up call. Stop being stupid. Start being unstoppable. Recognizing your own patterns of self-sabotage begins with an uncomfortable truth. Most of the wounds you carry were not caused by enemies, but by the habits you refused to break and the choices you kept repeating even when you knew better. It's easy to blame circumstances, people, or timing, but deep down you know that the real battlefield is inside your own mind. Every time you choose doubt over action, every time you stay silent when you should speak, every time you settle for a situation that drains you instead of elevates you, you are playing against yourself. Self-sabotage isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to procrastinate one more day, the simple choice to not show up fully, the small moment when you shrink instead of standing tall. These little decisions become patterns, and patterns become identity if they go unchecked. That's why recognizing them is the first step toward breaking free. You have to call yourself out, not with shame, but with honesty. You have to catch the moments where you choose comfort even though it's killing your potential. You have to see where you allow fear to disguise itself as logic, where you convince yourself you're being cautious when really you're just scared to grow. Most people don't realize how often they betray themselves, how many opportunities they let slip because they didn't feel ready, how many relationships they destroyed because they didn't believe they deserved better, how many dreams they buried because they feared failure more than they valued progress. The truth is, recognizing your own self-sabotage requires courage because it forces you to admit that the life you want is not blocked by destiny but by your decisions. When you start noticing these patterns, you begin to understand that every excuse you've ever made was just a wall you built around your potential. You see the moments where you acted blindly, not because you were incapable, but because you stopped thinking and started reacting. You see how often you allowed emotions to control you, how often you chased validation instead of purpose, how often you let temporary feelings create permanent consequences. Recognizing your patterns means paying attention to where your life repeats itself. If you always end up in the same kind of relationship, the same kind of mistakes, the same chapter of frustration, it's not the world doing it to you. It's your own choices setting the stage again and again. And once you understand that, you can no longer pretend you don't know what's holding you back. It takes a strong mind to step back and observe your life without excuses. It takes strength to admit you've been the one standing in your own way. It takes maturity to say you're tired of being your own problem and ready to be your own solution. When you finally see your patterns clearly, something inside you shifts. You stop blaming people who no longer matter. You stop waiting for life to magically change. You stop hoping someone will save you. Instead, you look at yourself and realize you've always had the power to rewrite your story. You realize that self-sabotage is just a habit, not a destiny. And habits can be broken the moment you choose awareness over denial. Recognizing your patterns creates accountability, and accountability creates transformation. Once you see your contradictions, you can correct them. Once you acknowledge your weaknesses, you can strengthen them. Once you understand your triggers, you can avoid repeating the same cycles. And once you know exactly how you sabotage yourself, you gain the ability to stop doing it. Understanding that the world is already hard and that you can't afford to make it harder for yourself starts with facing reality without sugarcoating it. Life doesn't owe anyone a break, and waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity, or the perfect circumstances is a trap that keeps people stuck in cycles of disappointment. The truth is that life throws challenges at everyone, some predictable, some unexpected, and the weight of those challenges is already heavy enough. When you compound that weight with careless decisions, reckless behavior, or repeated self-sabotage, you are stacking unnecessary burdens on your own shoulders. Too many people move through life as if the universe has nothing else to do but hand them relief, and when that relief doesn't come, they are shocked, frustrated, or angry. The reality is that your life is largely shaped by how you respond to the circumstances you are given, and the first step in surviving and thriving is to stop making it harder than it already is. Every choice you make has consequences, and some of those consequences create struggles that weren't even necessary. Choosing to ignore your responsibilities, to dwell in negativity, or to act without foresight is not just foolish, it is self-inflicted suffering. When you accept that the world is already difficult, you begin to see the importance of strategic thinking and intentional living. The people who succeed, who rise above, are not the ones who are free from obstacles. They are the ones who refuse to add extra obstacles for themselves. They understand that time is precious, that energy is limited, and that mistakes of cost that ripple far beyond the moment. It's not about avoiding risk entirely. It's about understanding the risks you take and not letting ignorance, ego, or impulsiveness multiply them unnecessarily. Every careless word, every foolish action, every bad habit carries weight, and in a world that is already unforgiving, adding extra weight is a luxury you cannot afford. The smarter you get about your choices, the more control you reclaim over your life, and the more likely you are to channel your energy into progress instead of regret. The hard truth is that life's difficulty doesn't give anyone a hall pass to act recklessly. If anything, the harder life hits, the more responsibility you must take for your actions. Being aware of the harshness of life means understanding that mistakes are expensive, that time lost can never be recovered, and that every moment wasted on foolishness is a moment stolen from your potential. It forces you to make decisions with intention, to think before you act, and to plan your steps with care. When you begin to internalize this reality, you start noticing the patterns of self-defeat that others might overlook. You notice the late nights wasted on distractions, the relationships that drain more than they give, the impulses that lead to setbacks rather than advancement. You realize that every foolish act is a burden you didn't need to carry, and every foolish choice is an opportunity lost to build, grow, or elevate yourself. Understanding this truth changes the way you see responsibility, accountability, and growth. You start to measure your actions against the weight of the world. Instead of your temporary desires, you start to value patience over impulse, discipline over indulgence, and clarity over confusion. You learn to respect the natural difficulty of life, and in doing so, you learn to respect yourself and your potential. You recognize that being smart isn't about avoiding mistakes entirely. It's about choosing which battles to fight, which paths to take, and which risks are worth the cost. When you fully internalize that life is already hard, you stop being reckless with your own existence, and you begin to take ownership of the energy, time, and effort you have. You begin to understand that in order to rise, to thrive, and to leave a mark, you cannot afford to add unnecessary weight to an already heavy world, and every decision from that moment on becomes a deliberate step towards survival, progress, and mastery. Owning your truth and facing your mistakes is one of the hardest battles a person can fight because it forces you to strip away illusions, excuses, and the comforting lies you tell yourself to avoid discomfort. Most people live in denial, acting like their failures belong to chance, to other people, or to circumstances beyond their control, but the real work begins the moment you stop pointing fingers and start looking inward. Every mistake, every misstep, every time you acted out of fear, anger, or ignorance leaves a mark, and pretending it didn't happen only prolongs the cycle of pain. Owning your truth doesn't mean beating yourself up endlessly. It means looking at your life with raw honesty, accepting your flaws, and understanding that the choices you made, both good and bad, shape the reality you live in today. This kind of ownership is revolutionary because it shifts power back into your hands. Once you stop blaming, once you stop hiding behind excuses, you reclaim the ability to shape your future. Mistakes become lessons instead of burdens when you face them squarely and refuse to run from the responsibility they demand. There's a freedom and truth that no illusion or lie can ever give. And the first taste of that freedom comes from admitting exactly who you are and what you've done. Facing your mistakes requires humility and courage, two qualities that many shy away from because they seem uncomfortable or even dangerous. Humility forces you to admit that you were wrong, that you acted carelessly, or that you failed to see what was right in front of you. Courage allows you to confront the consequences of those actions, to sit in the discomfort instead of escaping it, and to use it as fuel to rise stronger rather than staying trapped in guilt or shame. Many people avoid this process because it feels easier to deflect to blame or to bury the past under layers of justification. But the truth is, running from mistakes only gives them more power over your life. The moment you face them, you strip them of their ability to control you. The moment you own your truth, you begin the work of transformation. Every failure you've suffered can teach you something profound about your character, your habits, and the way you interact with the world. Every regret can be a roadmap for growth if you allow it to illuminate the parts of yourself that need attention, correction, and elevation. Using mistakes as fuel is an act of self-mastery. It's easy to let failure break you, to let it define you, to let it become the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you deserve. But real power comes when you take that same failure and turn it into motivation, insight, and resilience. When you own your truth, you begin to see the patterns that have held you back, the habits that have sabotaged your progress, and the moments where fear, pride, or ignorance got the better of you. And instead of despairing over what you cannot change, you learn to focus on what you can, your attitude, your effort, your choices from this moment forward. This perspective transforms mistakes from anchors that weigh you down into stepping stones that elevate you. It gives you clarity to act with intention, to break cycles of self-destruction, and to build a life that reflects your potential rather than your past errors. This process also demands authenticity, the courage to live in alignment with your values even when it's uncomfortable, when you own your truth. You stop hiding behind facades or performing for the approval of others. You confront the reality of your decisions and their consequences without flinching. You learn that integrity is more valuable than ego, that accountability is more powerful than denial, and that honesty with yourself is the foundation for any meaningful change. By facing your mistakes head on, you step into a life of clarity, self-respect, and purpose. You begin to see that growth isn't about avoiding failure, but about transforming it into wisdom, strength, and resilience. Each lesson learned becomes a tool for navigating the world with greater awareness. Every regret becomes a compass guiding you toward better choices. And every truth you embrace becomes a declaration that you are done letting yourself be small, weak, or lost. It is through this relentless ownership that transformation is possible, through this fearless confrontation that liberation begins, and through this uncompromising honesty that the road to self-mastery opens up in front of you. Cutting off fake friends, bad habits, and anything that kills your growth is a step most people fear, yet it is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect and self-preservation you can commit to. Too often, we allow people, routines, and circumstances into our lives that drain us, distract us, or hold us back, all in the name of comfort, familiarity, or fear of being alone. Fake friends whisper encouragement when it serves them and disappear when you need loyalty. They envy your light while pretending to celebrate it. They pull you into drama, temptation, and stagnation, and their presence becomes a slow poison disguised as companionship. Letting them stay in your life under the illusion of friendship is choosing to be weighed down, to compromise your energy and to risk your growth. Recognizing who adds value and who subtracts from your life is not cruel, it is necessary. You cannot rise to your potential carrying people who refuse to elevate themselves or support your ascent. Every moment you invest in those who do not respect your journey is a moment stolen from your purpose, a moment that could have been used to build, create, or evolve. Cutting ties is an act of clarity. It sends a message that your time, energy, and growth are not negotiable. The same principle applies to habits. Habits are invisible chains. Some are comforting, others are destructive. Bad habits masquerade as harmless indulgences, small acts that seem insignificant but accumulate weight over time. They eat at your productivity, cloud your judgment, and distract you from the focus you need to advance. Smoking, drinking, procrastination, overthinking, overcommitting, or mindlessly scrolling through life, each one chips away at your potential in ways that are subtle but devastating. To grow, you must confront these habits honestly, recognize their costs, and replace them with routines that empower rather than enslave you. Transformation is impossible while you cling to what keeps you small. It's not easy. Breaking a habit requires discipline, persistence, and the willingness to face discomfort head on, but the freedom on the other side is worth the struggle. Every chain you break, every destructive loop you escape, every routine you upgrade becomes a step closer to the life you're meant to live. This also applies to environments and situations that are toxic to your growth. Whether it's a job that drains your soul, a neighborhood that limits your opportunities, or a lifestyle that encourages mediocrity, refusing to let destructive forces dominate your life is critical. Growth cannot coexist with toxicity. You cannot plant seeds of greatness in soil poisoned by negativity, judgment, or stagnation. When you cut off the elements that drag you down, you create space for energy, clarity, and opportunity. You reclaim your focus, and you send a signal to the universe and to yourself that you are no longer available for circumstances that undermine your progress. This act of separation is not selfish, it is survival. It is the declaration that you value your potential more than comfort, your dreams more than distraction, and your future more than familiarity. The act of cutting off what kills your growth is also deeply psychological. Every attachment to the wrong people, every indulgence in destructive habits, every tolerance of toxic environments trains your mind to accept limitation. You begin to normalize mediocrity and redefine failure as comfort, breaking free challenges that conditioning. It forces you to redefine boundaries, to assert your worth, and to trust yourself enough to stand alone if necessary. There is power in that solitude, power in clarity, power in knowing that your advancement is not dependent on validation, approval, or external permission. Every time you remove what no longer serves you, you step closer to mastery of your life, closer to a state where your energy is protected, your vision is clear, and your growth is unstoppable. Surrounding yourself with authenticity, discipline, and opportunity amplifies your progress. Cutting away fake friends, bad habits, and toxic environments is not just a subtraction. It is a strategic creation of space where your life can flourish. It allows you to prioritize what truly matters: your goals, your values, your growth, and the people who genuinely support you. Growth is a process of refinement as much as it is of effort, and refinement requires knowing what to remove as much as what to embrace. Every severed connection with negativity, every habit you break, and every toxic influence you let go of becomes a brick in the foundation of your new life. It is in this deliberate pruning, in this conscious elimination of what weakens you, that your true potential begins to emerge sharp and unburdened, ready to rise beyond the limitations that once held you back. Choosing wisdom over impulse, purpose over pride, and elevation over ego is a journey that demands vigilance, self-awareness, and a relentless commitment to growth. Most people move through life reacting to the world, letting emotions, temptations, and fleeting desires dictate their path. Impulse is easy. It feels natural, immediate, and often rewarding in the short term, but it rarely serves your long-term vision. Acting without thought, giving in to momentary cravings, or letting anger, fear, or pride control your decisions is a form of self-betrayal. Every time you act on impulse instead of choice, you sacrifice the power to shape your own life with intention. Wisdom is not just knowledge, it is the discipline to pause, reflect, and choose what serves you, even when it is uncomfortable or requires restraint. It is understanding that every decision carries weight and that your present actions echo into your future. When you consistently choose wisdom, you build momentum toward a life that reflects your highest potential rather than the chaos of momentary urges. Purpose over pride is another pillar of meaningful living. Pride is deceptive. It disguises itself as confidence or self-respect, but more often than not, it becomes a mask for insecurity, stubbornness, or fear of vulnerability. Pride makes people cling to old habits, defend toxic relationships, and resist growth because admitting mistakes or asking for guidance feels like weakness. Choosing purpose over pride means prioritizing your mission, your growth, and your values above the ego-driven need to always be right or to always appear strong. It means being willing to listen, to learn, and to humble yourself for the sake of advancement. Every time you let pride dictate your actions, you reinforce barriers between yourself and your destiny. But when purpose leads the way, every step, every decision, and every interaction becomes a building block toward something greater. Purpose is the compass, and pride is the distraction. Letting purpose guide you ensures that your energy is spent where it matters most. Elevation over ego is perhaps the hardest choice because ego thrives on validation, attention, and immediate gratification. Ego pushes you to react, to compete unnecessarily, to compare, and to engage in battles that serve no higher goal. It whispers that you must prove yourself, dominate, or outperform others to feel worthy, when in truth, the path to real power lies in rising above the noise. Elevation requires patience, discipline, and focus. It means investing your energy in growth, learning, and mastery rather than temporary victories that feed your ego but leave you stagnant. Choosing elevation over ego is choosing the long game over short-term satisfaction. It is the recognition that your legacy is built by consistent, intentional actions that align with your values, not by impulsive moments of pride or petty competition. Every time you resist the pull of ego, you gain clarity, control, and the ability to act with purpose. The combination of these choices, wisdom over impulse, purpose over pride, and elevation over ego, creates a life of intentionality and momentum. It trains your mind to pause before reacting, to weigh the consequences of your actions, and to prioritize what truly matters. It reshapes your decision-making so you no longer wander aimlessly or act from weakness. Instead, you act from power, clarity, and a deep understanding of what serves your growth. This alignment with your higher self becomes a protective force, guiding you away from distractions, destructive patterns, and unnecessary struggles. It also cultivates resilience because when you operate from wisdom and purpose, setbacks no longer shake your foundation. They become lessons, adjustments, and fuel for your ascent. Choosing wisely requires constant self-reflection and honesty. It demands that you evaluate your motivations, challenge your impulses, and confront your ego whenever it seeks to manipulate your actions. It is a lifelong practice of asking, does this move me closer to the life I want, or does it feed my temporary desires? Every decision guided by wisdom, purpose, and elevation compounds over time, building a life of strength, clarity, and impact. You begin to recognize the difference between what feels good in the moment and what truly advances your journey. You start to see how fleeting pleasure, unchecked anger, and ego-driven choices can derail everything you've worked for. And as this awareness grows, it becomes easier to reject the shortcuts and illusions that once seemed tempting, replacing them with deliberate, intentional actions that honor your potential. When you make these choices consistently, life begins to change. Your path becomes clearer, your energy sharper, and your influence greater. Impulses lose their grip. Pride loses its power, and ego no longer dictates your steps. You begin to live from a place of mastery where every action, every decision, and every moment reflects the wisdom you've cultivated, the purpose you've embraced, and the elevation you seek. It is in this practice, this conscious alignment with what truly matters, that you break free from the cycles of foolishness and step fully into a life that is intentional, empowered, and unstoppable.